What catastrophe could be so profound that it reshapes the societal structure of an entire continent? In the 14th century, Europe faced such a calamity. An insidious plague, known as the Black Death, swept across the lands, leaving in its wake a trail of devastation and profound change. This plague, a grim reaper of sorts, claimed between 30 to 50% of Europe's population, fundamentally altering the social, economic, and cultural fabric of the continent. As the Black Death ravaged communities, its influence seeped into every aspect of life, instigating a series of transformations that would redefine the course of European history. The repercussions of this plague were not merely confined to the staggering death toll. Its impact resonated through the centuries, shaping societal norms, economic systems, and cultural ideologies. Now let's delve into the profound transformations that the Black Death brought upon European society. Imagine a society where social class was rigidly defined, suddenly thrown into chaos. This was the reality in 14th century Europe when the Black Death swept across the continent, decimating the population and shattering the existing social order. Feudalism, the dominant social system of the time, was based on a hierarchy of obligations. At the top were the nobility and clergy, while at the bottom were the peasants, bound to the land and their feudal lords. But as the plague claimed the lives of 1 in every 2 to 3 people, labor shortages became the norm. With fewer workers to till the fields, the value of labor shot up, and peasants found themselves in a position to demand higher wages and better conditions. The Black Death, in a grim twist of fate, played a key role in undermining the foundations of feudalism. This rise of the peasantry is best exemplified by the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. Spurred by harsh taxes and a desire for greater rights, the once subdued peasantry rose up. And while the revolt was ultimately quashed, it marked a significant moment in history, signaling the beginning of the end for feudalism. The Black Death also led to an unprecedented increase in social mobility. With entire families and communities wiped out, survivors often found themselves inheriting property and wealth. This redistribution of wealth allowed many to move up the social ladder, a rarity in the rigidly stratified society of the time. However, this period of upheaval and uncertainty also bred fear and suspicion. Minority groups became scapegoats, blamed for the spread of the plague. Jews, beggars, and lepers were often singled out and persecuted, with many Jewish communities being expelled or massacred. These witch hunts, driven by fear and a need to make sense of the devastation, were a tragic consequence of the societal turmoil caused by the Black Death. So, in a society turned upside down, the lowest class found new opportunities while others faced persecution. The Black Death, a plague of unimaginable horror, became a catalyst for social change, reshaping European society in ways that would have lasting impacts for centuries to come. What happens to an economy when half of its workforce disappears overnight? This is exactly the question Europe was forced to grapple with during the Black Death. The plague's devastating mortality rates led to a significant decrease in the labor force, which in turn triggered a series of profound economic changes. Firstly, the scarcity of labor led to a dramatic rise in wages. With fewer people around to work the fields or man the workshops, those who survived found themselves in high demand. The value of labor skyrocketed, and the surviving peasants, laborers, and craftsmen found themselves earning more than they could have ever dreamed before. It was a time of paradoxical prosperity for those who managed to escape the grasp of the plague. Alongside this, the manorial system, which had formed the backbone of the medieval economy, began to crumble. This system, characterized by the lord of the manor providing protection in exchange for service, was no longer viable in a world where labor was scarce and expensive. Many serfs, previously bound to the land of their lord, seized the opportunity to seek better conditions and higher wages. As a result, the manorial system declined, and in its place, a more market-oriented economy began to emerge. This shift was accompanied by a surge in trade and commerce. With the rise in wages, people had more disposable income to spend on goods. This, coupled with the development of new trade routes and techniques, led to an expansion of markets, both local and international. The merchant class, which had been relatively minor before the Black Death, began to grow in numbers and influence. They navigated the new trade networks, bringing goods, ideas, and even cultures from far and wide. This period also saw the development of new agricultural techniques. With fewer hands to work the fields, efficiency became paramount. Innovations were made in farming equipment and methods, leading to higher crop yields despite the reduced workforce. These advancements laid the groundwork for the agricultural revolution that would follow in later centuries. It's essential to note, though, that these economic shifts were not universally beneficial. While some prospered, others found themselves facing hardship and poverty. The increased cost of labor meant that many landowners and nobles were left struggling to maintain their estates. Income inequality increased, leading to social unrest and, in some cases, violent revolts. In sum, the Black Death brought about a seismic shift in the European economy. The rise in wages, the decline of the manorial system, and the growth of trade and commerce marked the end of the medieval economy and the beginning of the early modern period. The economic fabric of Europe was forever altered, with some reaping the benefits of increased wages and new trade opportunities. How does a society express its pain, its loss, and its newfound fear through art and culture? Let's delve into the cultural impact of the Black Death on Europe. The profound loss of life and societal upheaval triggered by the Black Death led to a wave of new religious ideas. As people grappled with the magnitude of the disaster, many began to question established religious beliefs and institutions. This skepticism gave rise to movements such as the Flagellants, who believed the plague was a divine punishment and sought penance through public self-flagellation. In the realm of art and literature, the Black Death left a haunting imprint. The grim reality of the plague inspired a darker, more somber tone in artistic expression. This shift is vividly seen in the works of renowned authors like Dante Alighieri and Giovanni Boccaccio. Boccaccio's The Decameron, a collection of novellas, tells the story of a group of young people fleeing the plague in Florence, a narrative that captures the fear, uncertainty, and resilience of the time. The Black Death also played a role in the rise of the Renaissance, a period of renewed interest in classical learning and values. The plague's disruption of the social order encouraged a re-evaluation of societal norms and sparked a surge in creativity and innovation. This period saw the rise of humanism, a philosophical movement that emphasized the value and agency of the individual, a stark contrast to the collective suffering endured during the plague. Skepticism and secularism also grew as people sought to understand the plague outside the lens of divine punishment. This shift marked the beginning of a gradual move away from the Church's monopoly on knowledge, paving the way for the scientific revolution of the following centuries. Thus, the Black Death, a tragedy of unimaginable proportions, became a catalyst for a cultural revolution. It redefined Europe's religious landscape, reshaped its arts and literature, and laid the groundwork for intellectual movements that would go on to shape the modern world. So, we have seen how a single biological event shaped the social, economic, and cultural landscape of Europe. The Black Death, a plague of unimaginable proportions, drastically altered the society of 14th century Europe. It signaled the decline of feudalism and the rise of the peasantry, creating waves of social mobility previously unseen. Economically, it led to a surge in wages, a decline in the manorial system, and a boom in trade and commerce. Culturally, it gave rise to new religious ideas, Renaissance art and literature, and a growth in skepticism and secularism. Even in the face of death and despair, human resilience and adaptability shone through, leading to transformation and progress. The legacy of the Black Death continues to echo through the centuries, reminding us of our vulnerability, but also our capacity to change and evolve. The Black Death, a catastrophe that brought death and despair, also brought about transformation and progress, forever altering the course of European history.